in this past election, American intelligence believes that there was intervention by a foreign power, specifically by Russia, and there's a sense that there was a manipulation of social media and other sort of search platforms. So the stakes are high in all the ways you describe them, but even to the point of on a geopolitical scale,
Absolutely.
That's how high the stakes are. Was that a wake-up call?
I think it's become a wake-up call for many. I think that it's got a long history. So let's just take the core data architecture that's built into our Constitution, the census. The census is what allows us every 10 years to count the population in the United States and then to make decisions how we reapportion the population or how we distribute a lot of resources. Since 1790, when we started actually doing this, people have manipulated that data source. They've manipulated it for all sorts of political gains. They've manipulated the outputs of it for all sorts of gerrymandering. They've tried to mess with it. Voting records, no different. We have a long history of trying to mess with voter registration. And that manipulation is not just by external actors. That's also manipulation within our own state. Nowhere is that clearer than the history of Jim Crow and what we've done around a huge amount of racism in the US. So here we are walking into a 2016 election with a long history of every data type being messed with for economic gain, for political ideology, for fun and games, for foreign adversarial attacks. Of course people tried to mess with this election. They always have. The question is what was different about this one and how did it play out?
Okay, so what was different?
And so for me, what I saw again was that we started to see technologies be part of the equation. And they started being part of the equation in multiple fronts. So on one hand, there was the moment of using technology to manipulate the media. And that perhaps is the one that is often most challenging because—
How is the media manipulated?
Sure, so a lot of efforts over the years, any journalist knows that you get phone calls trying to get you to sell their product effectively or to tell their story or their opinion from the White House or whatever variation of it. So journalists have long dealt with very powerful actors trying to manipulate them directly. What they are less familiar with is a world of things that look organic, designed to manipulate them. So let's talk about some concrete examples. When you have decentralized populations who are running campaigns to get content onto Twitter, to make it look natural, to produce sock puppets, to produce basically fake accounts on Twitter, to then write out to you as a journalist and be like, hey, what's going on with this Pizzagate thing? And all of a sudden, you as a journalist are like, what is happening? There's, somebody in the public has given me a tip. I need to pay attention. Except it wasn't just somebody in the public. It's somebody who's intending to get a message to you, very much designed to send you down a particular track. And that's where we started to see massive coordinated efforts. These efforts had been happening for social media marketing for the better part of a decade. But we started to see it really turn political. The interesting thing is the political coordination of it, at least that I got to witness, was first not foreign actors. It was people who were messing with systems. So, I watched this pattern with young people for the better part of 10 years. So
it was trolls and people that were just having fun?
It started out that way. Because, when I watched it, years ago, there was nothing funnier than to get Oprah Winfrey to say inappropriate things on TV. Right? It was great. So I watched teenagers build these skills in order to get Oprah to say something ludicrous. And they learned how to do this. And that's a skill that, is sort of interesting when you start to think about how it can be mobilized. And then we have a situation, about 4 or 5 years ago, where we have a lot of very misogynistic practices happening through technology. New techniques, things like doxing, the idea of finding somebody's full information so that you can actually cause them harm. So an example of causing them harm would be something like swatting, which is the idea that I would call up 911 and say that there's a bomb in your house. And the result is that the police would send out a SWAT team, swatting, to your house, cordoned off looking for the bomb. But it was a hoax. It was not actually real. So these were things that were done to start attacking a group of women in a whole set of phenomena known as Gamergate. So these were moments where these same networks started to take a more problematic turn. They started actually doing things that had a lot more harm to people. These are the cornerstones of a lot of groups who began then trying to mess with journalists for the election. At the beginning, it was pure spectacle. It was hysterical to watch during the Republican primaries this, weird candidate who, for all intents and purposes was a reality TV show star, be such a fun game to mess with. Could you get the journalists to obsess over him? And the answer is yes, you can get journalists to obsess over something.
You think the obsession with Donald Trump started with sort of these people on the internet that were just trying
I think that
to get journalists to take this candidate seriously?
I think that they scaled it. I think these were dynamics that we had seen for a
They
whole variety of
scaled it,
reasons.
and then a foreign government hired them?
No. Much of what we've seen in these, crazy environments have not actually been coordinated at that level.
So it happened organically.
There are versions of it that did. And I think what we don't know at this point is what are some of the other formal versions that happened. What we saw, we've seen the rise of white supremacists and white nationalists who started coordinating with these groups last summer.